Our top focus of this hour is on the G7 summit. Prime Minister Modi has landed in Calgary for the G7 summit. He is all set to attend the G7 summit at Kananaskis in Canada. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi has landed in Calgary. That's the latest update that is coming in. He's all set to attend the G7 summit that is being held amid the Israel-Iran conflict and the escalating tensions in the West Asia region. But these are the visuals. Prime Minister Modi, after he landed at Calgary in Canada for the G7 summit. All eyes are on the G7 summit, and this is the 51st edition of G7 summit that is being held in Kananaskis in Alberta. And all eyes are also on the bilateral talks that will be held on the sidelines of the summit. Remember, India is not a part of the G7 core members, but India is every year invited for the G7 summit, which shows India's strong position in geopolitics. And these are the visuals of Prime Minister Modi after concluding his Cyprus visit. He has landed in Calgary for the G7 summit, the 51st G7 summit. And my colleague Shivani Sharma is now joining us with more details on this. Shivani, Prime Minister Modi has now landed in Calgary for the G7 summit. All eyes are on the G7 summit. What all is on the agenda this year?
Anjali, this is a very important G7 summit amid the geopolitical conflicts in the Middle East, especially. And also, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Canada nearly after a decade, though he has been consecutively present for the G7 summit since last 6 times, and this is his 6th G7 summit. And when we talk about G7, this is a summit where the nations of most strong economies of the world, they gather. There will be world leaders, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also be holding some very important bilaterals out there, Anjali. And as we see him landing in Canada, he will be holding some very important, crucial meetings from the newly elected Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. And we've known that the relations between India and Canada have been quite evolving in the last few years, especially the previous Prime Minister. So this is very important, not only in terms of G7 summit, but also Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Canada. Anjali.
Also, Shivani, does India's presence at the G7 summit every year, despite not being a core member, reinforce its indispensability as far as the geopolitics, the global geopolitics is concerned?
Certainly, Anjali. See, the way the world looks at India has drastically changed in past few years. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been invited every year since last 6 G7 summits. So very important out here that India is not only acknowledged as an important world partner, and India stands especially against terror. India's call for peace, India's call for development is what is being looked up to by all these nations. So this is very important to mention that India is being acknowledged as an important economy, a strong partner, and that's why what Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be talking about and addressing the G7 summit will also be a very important focus for all these nations and for the world too.
Right. Also, Shivani, we cannot ignore the fact that there's tensions rising in West Asia, although the G7 summit is being held, but there are also rising tensions with no signs of de-escalation as far as Iran and Israel conflict is concerned.
Anjali, see, India has been very neutral when it comes to the conflicts between Iran and Israel. And not only this, India has called for peace, India has called for dialogue, and India is also evacuating Indian nationals from Iran and Israel also. So when Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be addressing the leaders and he'll be meeting the key partners at the G7 summit, it will be very important what he addresses about this particular condition with situation in the Middle East. But yes, certainly India has always called for peace, and India has been evacuating the nationals from this whole area. And India has called for de-escalation through dialogue between the nations.
But Shivani, the G7 countries seem to be deeply divided as far as if we talk about this conflict between Iran and Israel.
Certainly, you see, Anjali, there are countries who are in the favor of Iran. There are countries who are talking and supporting Israel. But, India has always been known for its diplomatic balancing act when it comes to these kind of opinions among nations. And India has been very clear what it supports is peace. What it supports is dialogue. It doesn't ever try to encourage any kind of conflict between nations, and that's what is happening right now. Also, the statements that have been coming in from MEA, they have been very clear in the stand of the country that there should be dialogue between the nations. It is a well-known fact that India and Israel, they share a very good diplomatic partnership. So certainly, but still, India has always called for dialogue and peace, and here also India's stand is very clear.
All right, Shivani, do stay with us. India Today's Gaurav Sawant is in Calgary, and let's listen into some reactions from the ground on the excitement and the enthusiasm of the Indian diaspora on Prime Minister Modi's Canada visit.
Some bitterness had crept into the India-Canada relationship in the past several years, but now there's a new beginning. And in our culture and philosophy, when something good, something auspicious starts, usually it's with having something sweet. And we are at a sweet shop here in Calgary, in Canada. This is Gwalia Sweets. I want you to look at this shop. This is the name of this shop, Gwalia Sweets, and you can just look around. Lots of mithai here, but what we are celebrating today is this, the tricolor mithai with Prime Minister Narendra Modi here in Calgary. And I want to ask Dhaval Desai, the proprietor of Gwalia Sweets, who's put all this effort to get this mithai with the Prime Minister here. Dhaval bhai, क्या-क्या mithai बनाई है आज आपने?
Sir, this is specially for welcoming Modi ji. This is what we made to welcome Modi ji, right? We are not able to meet him personally, but this is our heartily wishes and our efforts for the best relationship between Canada and India, right?
And this looks lovely. So I can see laddus are there, pedas are there.
These all sweets are Modi ji's favorite personally.
Okay, so just see this. Now, what all are Modi ji's favorites? Describe to us.
These are the laddus, and these are the peda. White peda is there, and this is some sweet from pista.
You know, a lot of bitterness had crept into India-Canada relationship. You think this visit will do something?
Definitely. This visit is a great initiative by Canadian Prime Minister, our Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. He invited Modi to G7 summit, and this is really a great initiative because the way India has grown over last almost a decade so fast, I think Canadian government has realized it, maybe a little late in the game, but they've realized it, that they need India in hand on hand to grow Canadian economy, and basically that helps all of us as our Indian citizens by birth. It helps us also to grow that way.
I think this is a time where our generation specifically is, doing their part to spread awareness and do their part to sort of show how powerful India is becoming, and it is slowly climbing up. They are no longer in need of help, and I think this is just going to lead to stronger connections for India internationally.
India-Canada relations had gone downhill when Justin Trudeau was the Prime Minister of Canada, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit in 2025 is after 10 years. Of course, in 2015, India and Canada became strategic partners, but then on the issue of Nijjar killing, Canada's allegations on India, the relationship went downhill to an extent that India withdrew our High Commissioner from Canada and vice versa. Certain allegations were leveled, but was any evidence put forward? And what happens to the relationship now in 2025 and onwards? With me is perhaps one of the best group of people I could speak to. Academics, scholars, professors at Calgary universities, doctors, professors, engineers and entrepreneurs. They join me on this India Today special broadcast, and I want to begin by asking Dr. Lodha of the Calgary University, in fact all Calgary University professors here with me and doctors. Dr. Saab, the relationship that went downhill with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, one, what's expected, and why did this relationship suddenly head south?
Yeah, so Gauravji, thank you very much for the question. The problem was initially why the relations was got not in the good terms because of the Trudeau government was in the minority, and that time he was requiring the support from the Jagmeet Singh from NDP government. And Jagmeet Singh is a pro-Khalistani, and this is separatist group also supported by other our neighbor country like Pakistan and these people. And so the government of Canada, especially Trudeau government, supported separatist group Khalistani, and that's why. And the other thing they did, the Trudeau did, was coming openly and giving a statement against India in the parliament. That was the worst thing what any politician could have done in his political career. And that was one of the reason India and Canada relations got roughened and
How did that adversely impact, ma'am? You're also in the University of Calgary and you're on board of the university,
Senate, yes.
on the Senate. How did this relationship going downhill impact students, for example, or lives of Indians and Canadians?
It kind of because once the prime minister of a country openly comes and speaks about one minority group in their country, it definitely attacks. The bullying for students or people of Indian origin happens on social media, in person, because it empowers the fringe element to do whatever, because they think that the government is with them and nothing is going to happen to them. So that was one of the reasons. But with Mr. Carney and the reality of the current political situation, Canada needs India for the economic survival. So we are hopeful that the relationship will change. Prime Minister Carney is a level-headed man. He's a seasoned politician, and he's a seasoned business person who has dealt with Bank of Canada, Bank of England. He was chairman of both the banks. So we are hoping that the relationship will improve, and at the same time, lowering the temperature would make life much easier for our young people in Canada.
Yeah, because we wouldn't want Indian children to come here and get bullied by the Khalistanis. That's strictly unacceptable.
And my colleague Shivani Sharma continues to stay with us. Shivani, how does Prime Minister Modi's today's itinerary look like? All right, we'll try to re-establish that connection, but the latest update that is coming in is that Prime Minister Modi has arrived in Canada for the G7 summit. These are the visuals after he landed in Calgary, and he's all set to attend the 51st G7 summit following an invitation from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney himself. Now, this will be his first visit since relations between New Delhi and Ottawa strained over the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, the 2025 G7 summit opens with high stakes and fresh diplomatic opportunity. For India and Canada, it's the first major face-to-face since relations soured in 2023. Now, with a new Canadian Prime Minister and a renewed push for dialogue, both sides are eyeing a reset. But can long-standing tensions be resolved on the sidelines of global diplomacy, is the question.
Canada relations, they went downhill when Justin Trudeau was at the helm of affairs, and it just kept going downhill despite India's best efforts to ensure that the relationship does not get impacted by Trudeau getting the support of the Khalistani elements. But now there is cautious optimism. Canada has invested more than $75 billion of their pension funds in the Indian markets because India is a very stable market. But the potential of this relationship is much more. Will this relationship realize its true potential under Mark Carney and Narendra Modi? Will there be action against the Khalistani elements? There's already conversation about intelligence cooperation and police cooperation between the two countries. What does that mean? I get you more in this report.
So Prime Minister Modi is in Canada for the 51st G7 summit. He has concluded his Cyprus trip and now he has landed in Calgary in Canada for the 51st G7 summit. And now all eyes are on whether India and Canada can better their ties, the strained ties due to the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
The stage is set for the 2025 G7 summit, one of the most anticipated diplomatic gatherings of the year. But for India and Canada, it signals the first high-level engagement between the two nations since ties soured in 2023. and is also Prime Minister Modi's first visit to Canada since 2015. With Mark Carney now at the helm of affairs as Canada's new Prime Minister, there is renewed hope for a diplomatic reset. Mark Carney has highlighted India's growing global influence, stating that it is impossible to address major challenges, whether it be energy security, climate change, or AI, without India at the table. Despite strained diplomatic ties, economic relations between India and Canada remain strong. India is Ottawa's 10th largest trading partner, with bilateral goods trade nearing $10 billion in 2024. India exported nearly $6 billion worth of goods to Canada, while imports totaled around $4 billion in 2024. Even as both nations try to normalize diplomatic relations. India's key demand from Canada remains stronger action against pro-Khalistan extremists operating on its soil. It will also be looking to put to rest allegations made by the Trudeau government regarding the death of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. New Delhi also seeks to resolve persistent visa delays and ensure smoother mobility for Indian students and professionals that have been impacted since 2023. India will advocate for mutual recognition of academic and professional qualifications, aiming to enhance talent exchange and economic cooperation. Could this be the breakthrough movement India and Canada have waited for? Bureau Report, India Today.
And now the G7 summit is being convened amid notable divisions among the Western allies, especially between the United States and other members. The G7 nations are having the differences over the West Asia war, especially over Israeli strikes on Iran as well as Gaza. They are also divided over Trump promoting Russia's return to the group amid the Ukraine-Russia war. The summit is also being held in the backdrop of the Trump tariffs and trade war across the globe. Canada also scrapped the joint summit statement to avoid showing overt divisions, and which is also being seen as another sign of discord between the Western nations. So all eyes are now on the 51st G7 summit. In fact, Prime Minister Modi has already landed in Calgary in Canada. All eyes are also on the bilaterals that will be taking place on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Will India be able to reset ties with Canada amid the strained relationship that the two countries are having over the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar? It remains to be seen, but as of now, Prime Minister Modi has landed in Canada for the G7 summit after the invitation from Canada Prime Minister Mark Carney.